Trust me bro, you didn't found this video. This video has found you. Because your imports probably suck. They might look like this, where you have this red scary number here showing that this is not ideal. Or you have this example where you use default export, and while that looks pretty good, it has some problems. Or we have this example where we have these ugly import paths. But honestly, fixing that is pretty easy. Just don't use these relative paths as they are called, and instead opt in for absolute paths. So like that. So with this video, you will master imports. You already saw tip 1 and I got 4 more tips plus 1 bonus performance tip. Sadly, with YouTube ads, I could only buy me 5 pizzas a month. So let's hear a quick word of today's sponsor. Have you ever tried finding bugs that got reported by your users? Yeah, me too. Did I found them? No, of course I didn't. Because I haven't used Posttalk, the all-in-one tool when it comes to understanding your users. So with Posttalk, your website gets product analytics, general web analytics, session replays, A/B testing, a bunch of cutting-edge AI features, and so much more. Posttalk really is a no-brainer and is actively shipping features every week. And the best of all, you get it for free with their generous tier. And of course, you can choose the pay-as-you-go plan for bigger projects or just more projects. You can find a link to them down in the description. Thanks to Posttalk for sponsoring this video. So tip number 2 is don't use barrel files. And I know all these senior devs out there are now crying, what, I can't use my barrel files anymore? You can, but you shouldn't. Because honestly, barrel files are pretty cool. You have this Next.js file, which just imports a bunch of components and then exports these components. And while this looks confusing first, this gives you a pretty cool effect. Because if you now have a component that now wants to use these components, you can easily import them from the same file, which definitely is cleaner than having multiple lines here. So yeah, that's the benefit, but sadly there's some hidden cost in here. Because yes, we are just using H1 and P, but all the other components that get imported by this barrel file are also inside of the bundle now, because that's what the bundler is seeing. He sees, oh, okay, H1 and P is used, so I take all the imports from the barrel file and put it also in the bundle. So with using barrel files, your bundle gets bigger and bigger. If you want to read yourself deeper into this, I link you a little article by Vercel, which better explains what is the internal problem with barrel files. But essentially, your app just gets slower. Tip number 3 is connected to that, because cool, now you are avoiding barrel files, but that doesn't mean that the stuff you're importing is doing that too. So the thing is that big packages, and especially for example icon libraries, are using barrel files internally. So you definitely need to be aware of that. I have this simple example here where I import from the icon library Lucid React. If you know Shadcyan, which I guess if you're watching this channel you know Shadcyan, this is the icon library that Shadcyan uses under the hood. And please don't do this mistake and importing everything from icons, because then you think like, okay, now I have all icons here, right? I can just see the list of icons in here and just choose the icon I want to use. Yes, but as you can see by this little clean extension I've installed here, the import size is big. Because you're essentially importing every icon from the icon library. And that's definitely something you want to avoid. Okay, I definitely have to get rid of my scarf for today because it's just too hot in here. And the wonderful extension I use for this is import cost. I really encourage you to use that, because that's just you understand your code better. So with import cost, you basically see how expensive your imports are. So you directly see, okay, I'm doing something wrong here and I should probably don't do it. So instead what you of course should do is picking the icons you want to use right in here. And now as you can see, this is so much smaller now. If you have this problem and you know you can't avoid it and you use Next.js, then there is a solution called optimized package imports, where Next.js basically is optimizing your package imports by supporting these usual libraries where things like this happen. Okay, tip number 4. Don't use default exports for your components. And I made this mistake in a video of mine, which you can find here, where I talk about the perfect React component. I used to have my components set it up like this. So this awesome button here, for example, you see export default awesome button. And this is aesthetically pleasing because now in button example, you can just import awesome button without these curly bracket things here. So your import just looks pretty. But there's a big problem, because theoretically I could do that, replace it here of course, and it would work. Because when you defaultly export something, the name is not connected anymore. And while I wouldn't do something like this here, I will rename my components. Components rename over time. This awesome button might get a perfect button. And now both these components here are somehow out of sync. And it gets even worse if I now want to search for this component. So if I say, where do I use this awesome button? Then I only find this component and I'm like confused, where does it come from? So yeah, just a quick tip, don't use default exports. Always do it like that, where you use these brackets here, say perfect button, and now you get an error here saying, okay bro, awesome button does not exist here. So you have to import it as a perfect button, and that's so much cleaner. And the next tip is use import aliases. So in your tsconfig.json file, you can find these paths, and here you can set up custom paths for your imports. So let's just make a dirty example here. I have this update slot with a components, and let's say I don't want to import this sub slot component every time with this long path. So I can just call this /uc/star, and then the import path, which is features update slot, and now this name has randomly changed, so like this. And now wherever I use this sub slots component, I see it is imported with add features update slot /components /sub slots. So the import path is getting pretty long, and if I say I want to have it shorter, I can do just that, /uc/sub slot. This is really powerful to make your imports cleaner by making them shorter. This might not automatically work for you, so you might have to configure your bundler. In Next.js, it is just working out of the box. And I said I give you a quick bonus tip, and therefore we look into this code, because most of the time the things we import at the top are the things that we use in the file, right? That's why we import them. We need them in the file, but sometimes we don't need them on the initial load. So if the website is loading, we might not need everything that we import here. One example here is a dialog component from Chatzian, and that's what I have here. I have this dialog, and this dialog content only shows up when I open the dialog. So why should I import that directly and include it in the initial bundle? I could do it better with a dynamic import. This is considered as lazy loading. So I say, hey, I want to import this create slot form, which is the component that is pretty heavy in here. If we look into this, this is just a big form doing a lot of things, and I don't need it initially. So I can just dynamically import things. Say SSR false if the component itself is client side, and now it's not in the initial bundle. And that's a clean way to import components that you don't need on the initial look or that are rendered conditionally. So yeah, thanks for watching. Shout out to the perfect React component where I made this little mistake about default exports, and have a great day. Bye bye.